Welcome to AMI Live. I'm your host and CEO, Jim Park. Today we're honored to have David Chiang, CIO of Pritzker Family Foundation, on our program. Prior to taking on this new role, David was a founder and chief investment officer of Idyllic Partners. He also built a stellar reputation in our industry, having worked at Soros Fund Management, Wilshire Private Markets, and GIC, among many others. In this episode, Brenda Chia, AAIM's co-chair and director at Paladin Capital, talks to David about his journey to become the head of one of the most recognized family office in the country. With that, I welcome David Chiang and Brenda Chia to today's conversation.
Hello, I'm Brenda Chia. I am the board co-chair of AIM and also one of the founding board members. I have with us today my friend, David Chiang, who is the new chief investment officer of the Pritzker Family Foundations. I've known David for a long time now, probably about 10 years or more. And he has a very interesting arc in his career trajectory. So I thought we would talk about that today. And maybe he'll be able to give you some advice on how to get on the buy side of the investment business. So David, it's great to see you again. Thank you for coming to the AIM conference and for supporting AIM over all these years that we've known each other. It's
Thanks
good
for
to
having
see you
me,
in San
Brenda.
Francisco.
Thank you.
Good, wonderful. So David, tell us a little bit about, the highlights of your career. And you've had a very successful career, and now you're in the catbird seat of a CIO position of a very interesting organization. So tell us a little bit about the highlights of your journey to get to this point.
Sure. So after graduating from Brown, I was fortunate to get recruited onto Wall Street at DLJ, doing deals on the investment banking side. Then I did direct deals for a number of great firms. And I then pivoted to the LP side, initially working for GIC, the government of Singapore.
I know that well, GIC.
At the time, most people did not know what a sovereign wealth fund was. Now everybody does. And so I think about taking that calculated risk at the time that obviously they're large, well-known, very global. And so that was just a unique opportunity for me at a young age to learn about the LP side.
Were you on the private investing team? Or?
I was.
Okay.
It was private equity
in
fund
New York?
investments as well as co-investments.
In New York?
In New York and San Francisco.
Okay. And there was a fairly small team at that time, right? Now it's a huge team, especially in New York. But
Yes. So back then, New York was a satellite office, if you can believe. New York, it was a very small office. There were 2 people in New York.
wow, so you were 50% of the office.
Correct.
That's amazing to think about that right now, because it's such an established organization right now. Everyone wants GIC to invest in them. But I met you actually after you left GIC. So where did your journey take you after GIC?
From GIC, for personal reasons, I'm married to an amazing woman who has a whole amazing career. We could do a whole segment on her separately, but we focusing on just as a journey together, supporting her, and we moved down to LA. And so LA, we were, she was in medical school and residency. I was working for Wilshire, doing a similar role that I was at GIC, but it focused on a fund-to-funds model.
Right, and at that time it was a much larger platform, no?
It was a $6 billion plus AUM business.
I mean, relative to GIC.
Relative to GIC, obviously meaningfully smaller than GIC,
Okay, right.
but focused on the middle market. It was a way
Got
for
it.
me to take a lot of the learning from GIC, which was deep due diligence in terms of market landscaping, looking at the competitive set, and then digging into certain segments, i.e. the middle market could be at the time difficult for GIC given the number of dollars
Right, they had to
put to work.
Right, right.
At Wilshire, we had the opposite impact where because our clients didn't want to pay us to do the larger, well-known established managers, we, by default, were focused on the middle market, and that's where I thought there was a lot of alpha generation anyway.
Right. And then you made one more pivot to Soros after that, didn't you?
I did.
You moved back to New York,
I
to
did.
the East Coast.
Another, often you'll find my professional and personal, I give a lot of credit to my better half because she's from New York.
Right.
And she's wanted to go home at some point. We'd spent 10 years in LA.
Right.
I met the Soros folks at a Milken conference.
Oh, wonderful.
And they wanted me to build out a strategic LP business. And to me, that was super exciting. And we relocated back to New York. I spent 7 years building a business there.
Right. So GIC and Wilshire are well-known institutional names. Soros, it's so dominated by the personality of George Soros. So did that feel more like a family office when you first joined, or was it more like the, institutional organizations as we know it today?
Right before I joined, technically Soros became a family office, so they turned back outside capital. And so to me, it felt like a very institutional family office.
Right.
There was an infrastructure in place, a CEO, a CIO, teams, processes, but at the same time, small enough by number of team members that we could be very entrepreneurial.
Speaking of entrepreneurial, then you took a little side trip away from Soros when you left, and we had a number of conversations when you were launching the entrepreneurial route for yourself. What did you learn from that journey?
I learned that relationships matter. So on the one hand, the relationships that I've had and developed over 25 years were extremely relevant, and regardless of whether you're at Soros or GIC, Wilshire, etc. But I also learned that size matters, right? This is an asset management industry. We're all focused on investment returns, but the attention that one gets is often tied to your AUM
Yes.
and the amount thus that you can invest into any fund, right? And so I was able to put together a number of interesting transactions on my own with different family offices,
Right.
but I missed the ability to invest at scale.
Right, right. Now, you told the story this morning on the panel about how you landed the Pritzker opportunity. It was because you were pitching them on your fund.
Yes, I was super lucky. I got an introduction to them. I gave them an update on what I was doing, and I was hoping that they would join and be LPs in my fund. And as we started conversating around different opportunities, they mentioned this larger role that they were looking for a CIO for their foundations. And as things go, we talked for 6 months about different ways to make this happen so that we're all aligned.
Right.
And so that I can still be entrepreneurial and yet invest at scale with a great
brand name,
brand name.
Behind you as well.
Yeah.
So you've been on the job for 2.5 months?
2.5 months.
So what has been going on in these 2.5 months? Like, what are your priorities? What are you doing with the team?
I am getting to know my team. They're all based in Chicago. I will remain in New York, so that's one of the new nuances that I'll have to manage, but it's exciting. I've been in Chicago quite a bit. I've been getting to understand the portfolio. There are effectively multiple portfolios given the number of clients, right? So
Yes.
I work specifically with 3 different branches of the Pritzker families, specifically Penny, who's the former Secretary of Commerce
Yes.
under Obama, Tom, who's still the executive chairman of Hyatt,
Right.
and Gigi and her husband Michael Pucker. So they both, they each have their own very well built out direct private equity firms.
And what value do you think AIM could add to what you're doing?
AIM has been, again, an amazing partnership and friend for 15 years. The fact that diversity as an asset is core to what I believe is not only a value, but a practical market reality, meaning the diversity of the relationships that I have and the ability to invest across different stages and build teams that have diversity of thought, as well as other metrics, that all leads to better decisions and access to the underlying entrepreneurs. So where AIM comes in is your own vast network, as you've grown, as you've expanded your relationships, and really bringing these topics to the top of mind. It's very relevant for me to have a friend in the industry that shares those values.
Terrific. Well, we look forward to a very productive relationship with you and the Pritzker Family Foundations. We hope to see you at a lot more events, but also outside of the events to have continued conversations about what you're investing in and how the AIM organization and network can be helpful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, David.
Appreciate it.